SOP 144. Hey, I submitted my podcast to all the directories. I want a bigger audience. Now what?
It's the School of Podcasting's morning announcements. Here's Dave Jackson.
All right, thanks for joining us here on the School of Podcasting's morning announcements. This is where we talk about all things podcasting, from planning to producing to promoting, everything about podcasting. Our website, schoolofpodcasting.com, our email, schoolofpodcasting@gmail.com, and our toll-free number, courtesy of podcastvoicemail.com, is 888-563-3228. And today we're talking about promoting your podcast. And at one of the last roundtables that we do at the School of Podcasting, well, somebody said, I've kind of listed all my podcasts in every directory there is to list them in. Now what? And Paul Colligan has a great post. Colligan, Colligan, paulcolligan.com says, stop looking to iTunes or Mommy. Where do audiences come from? Because most of us think that you produce a podcast, you submit it to iTunes, and then you rake in the big bucks. Well, it doesn't work that way. So I'm going to jump down here. He says, let's assume you're getting a very nice $20 per 1,000 downloads. Let's assume for a sake that it takes no cost to create your podcast. And let's assume you want to make $50,000 a year. Let's assume the industry standard 1.6 multiplier to figure out things like insurance, taxes, etc., etc. So you need to generate $80,000. And let's say you're doing 3 shows a week, 50 weeks a year, because you want to take 2 weeks off for vacation. That's 150 shows. That means you'd have to generate $533.33 per show. Now, also, at $20 per 1,000 downloads, that means you need 26,666 downloads per episode. And don't forget, you're doing that 3 times a week. He says if you can pull off those numbers and get those advertisers, great. But if not, you're still stuck at part A, which, of course, was produce a podcast. So, back to this whole audience thing. Paul says, in our experimenting around here, you can generate, at best, about 400 new subscribers just by being in iTunes. We've submitted enough shows to iTunes with no additional marketing to feel fine about that number. So where do the other 26,200 subscribers come from? And he says, side note, now you know why I don't really like the massive audience game in my podcasting ventures. I look for a very profitable niche where I can still make good scratch on about 1,000 subscriber-ish show. Really, in the end, it's much easier. He says, but where do you get the audience? iTunes ain't bringing it to you. Poddevio ain't bringing it to you. Podango ain't bringing it to you. Wizard ain't bringing it to you, and neither is the Zune. Ads on a show with a smaller audience than yours ain't bringing it to you either. Even passing out business cards at the New Media Expo isn't where you get your audience. So where do you get your audience? You have to advertise outside of the podcasting space. And if you look outside, it's a pretty big space. There are billions of people there, and they want your content. And it ain't iTunes' job to show them the way. It's yours. So I went over to Podcast Alley, and there was a old post there about promoting your podcast. And let's talk about the first things first. If you're not going outside the podosphere, what are you doing? Well, you're trading promos with other podcasters. You're sneezing into your microphone and not editing it out. You are, in some cases, I've heard where, I thought this was a great idea. If you have, oh, great, it's summer. Thank you for all you people that just said bless you into your iPod. And the reason I'm not editing those out, because I'm just doing this all day. It's summer in Ohio. The pollen count is like 8 million. If you have a podcast, let's say you do a music podcast and somebody else does a music news podcast. Well, the music news podcast could do like a little 1-minute snippet of his show and give it to the music podcast. The music podcast guy could take a 1 little minute and talk about his artist of the week. You could do a segment for each other if you wanted to do more than just, trade promos and things like that. That's great. Trading promos, cross-promotion, awesome. It's great to have friends that are podcasting because it's more eyes on news and tips and tricks and things like that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But realize we are still in our little podcasting bubble. We've got to quit preaching to the choir. And that's the part that we like about advertising, cross-promotion. We're talking to people who already understand podcasting. But now, how do we go bigger? Well, obviously, we got to go outside. So that's where you can do things like blogs. Find a blog that talks about your topic and go over and leave a comment on that blog. I get a lot of, not a lot, but I don't know, 10, 20 hits from different podcast directories. Podcast Pickle, Podcast Alley, places where I've left comments in forums. And that's the other one, forums, blogs, your email signature. This one's so easy. If you're sending an email to people, it should say Dave Jackson, schoolofpodcasting.com, except you'd want to put in your name and your website. Then the other thing you can do is press releases. And there are websites like prweb.com. So I'm going to be doing some interviews with some folks on one of my podcasts. I'll definitely do a press release about, hey, author of the new book, blah, 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 is on the blah, blah, blah podcast. Now, here's something else you can do. Paul talked about not bringing in an audience from the New Media Expo. This won't bring you in a huge audience, but it's free promotion, and a lot of times that's what we're looking for. If you go to the New Media Expo and you're in a session and they say, have any questions, come up with a question. Any question. And when you go to the mic, say, hi, this is Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com, and I had a question about blah, blah, blah. Throw in a plug, because not everybody's going to make it to the expo, but a lot of people will listen to the free audio that's available afterwards. Why not put a quick commercial? Now, don't go nuts with that. Hi, this is Dave Jackson of the schoolofpodcasting.com, where we have tutorials, resources, and live training for... No, get to your question. But I'm just saying, if I was there, and I still have a scheduling conflict at this point, but if I was there, every session I'm going to, I'm walking on the mic, and I'm going to come up with a question. The other thing is, if people don't understand podcasting, you might want to have some of your podcasts on a CD, along with make an intro. Hi, this is Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com. Thanks for taking time to listen to this CD. If you'd like to learn how to subscribe to this podcast, simply go to learntosubscribe.com. Then go over to the schoolofpodcasting.com and subscribe to the podcast. Now, here's a couple quick snippets of my podcast. Blah, blah, blah. You might want to even throw in, you don't need an iPod to listen to this. Things like that. That's one way. And then those CDs, again, you can leave them, go where your audience is and hand out CDs. When I go to a rock show, a rock concert, a couple times I've come out and local bands that play the type of music that I just listened to are standing outside handing out CDs or postcards or something, because they know you like that kind of music. Same thing, if you're a music podcast and you have interviewed a local musician in your area, burn that interview to a CD along with directions on about your podcast, how to find it, how to subscribe to it, how to listen to it, etc., and make a couple copies and give it to more than a couple, but make some copies, give it back to the band to hand out at their gigs, because their fans like that type of music. So why not, use them to promote your podcast? Another thing that musicians do is they will, if you're worried about the price of CDs, if you want to get a bunch made, because if you get a bunch made, they're really, really cheap, right? Why not get podcasters that are similar to yours? So let's say you do a NASCAR podcast, you have another podcast that's about cars, and another podcast that's about, I don't know, something automobile related. Why don't the three of you come up with a couple quick sample shows, have an intro that explains what this CD is, and you all chip in and you all hand out these CDs? Just a way to keep the price down, something I'm thinking of. The bottom line is promote wherever you can. But here's the other thing to think about. Before you even get in to printing out business cards, because business cards are another thing that you can use to, you can have a business card for contact information, and then you can have a business card for potential listeners that show what the podcast is about, where it is. Click here, go to this website and click listen. Things like that. But that would be number one. Get your website ready. If you're going to be directing people to your website, make sure that when people go there, it's easy to click on something to listen. Send your aunt to your podcast page, to your website, and say, okay, now listen to a podcast. Great. Okay, now contact me. How would you do that? Great. Okay, now I want you to subscribe to the podcast or find the RSS button. Great. Find somebody who knows nothing about podcasting and have them go to your website. Make sure that is step one if you're going to be sending people there. The other thing about building building an audience is to focus on content. Because when people finally show up, you don't want them to go, well, if you could skip shows 4, 9, and 15, that would be great. But there are all sorts of ways to promote your podcast. If you're a podcast about alcohol, make up a bunch of drink coasters and put it in your local pub. There's all sorts of promotional products that you can do. And there's even some like shirts and hats. Even if you're not going to make them for your fans, you can go to cafepress.com, have a shirt made, and you wear it, and a hat. It's like $15-$20 by the time you get go through shipping and all that stuff. And I've heard where some podcasters will give away T-shirts. You're trying to get that community going. You're trying to get that feedback going. Hey, if you send in a tip to the School of Podcasting, I'll give you a schoolofpodcasting.com T-shirt, that kind of thing. Some people will do that. Other people are like, look, I can't spend $20 every time somebody gives me a tip. Okay, well then another way to do it is, hey, each week we'll listen to the tips. Whoever has the best tip gets a T-shirt. Now you've made it into a competition. Want to make it interactive? Let the fans vote on which tip should get the T-shirt. Go over to surveymonkey.com. Now you've made it interactive. You've rewarded people for commenting to you, and you're promoting your podcast by giving them a free T-shirt. Obviously you should be using Facebook and MySpace, or MyBook and FaceSpace. Take your pick. I'm amazed that when I do a search for the School of Podcasting, not always on the first page, but definitely on the second is my School of Podcasting MySpace page. I am really late to the Facebook game, and I have an account and have done absolutely nothing with it, but everything I read says use it. Likewise, you could set up a Yahoo group. Now, Yahoo groups are a way to build community, and again, maybe that will help with content. Content will hopefully lead to more listeners or viewers. Podcastdirectory.com lets you search for podcasts by region. I did a search for all the podcasts in my metro area, this person says. So if you're looking to network with people locally. But I think the bottom line is you have to go outside, like Paul says, the podcast space. That's where the biggest potential is of people. And that's where you can do things like forums. Type in whatever your podcast is about. Music business forums, podcasting forums, NASCAR forums, whatever your podcast is about, look for that. That's a place. And again, if you're going to a forum, don't go over there and just pimp your podcast. Answer questions, act like a regular member, but be sure in your signature to have a link to your podcast. But I've heard of some people that will advertise. They'll find a magazine. Like I've been thinking for the School of Podcasting, I should find a popular small business podcast magazine or a people that need publicity, authors, comedians, musicians, people that need publicity. That would be a good place maybe for me to advertise. And when you do stuff like that, be sure to do something like schoolofpodcasting.com/mag. So you can go back and see how much traffic did that generate before you go spending more money on that. I've heard of some people using Google AdSense. They'll actually buy Google ads, but I'm not sure about that. Again, if you're going to do something like that, definitely track the results on it. But it is about going outside the podcasting sphere is where the biggest potential of new listeners are. Now, the thing I need to do, I talked about this last winter and I haven't done it yet. Now that it's summer, I can. I have a clear bag that I have some magnets that I put in. I could put CDs in that. And then I have a display that says free CDs. It also has magnets on the bottom of that. And when I get out of my car and go to the store, I throw the sign up, I throw the CDs on the trunk, and boom, my car is now a merch table, only it's free. You could use that for a way to promote your, and again, it comes back to CDs. And again, CDs are relatively cheap, even if you make them on your own. I would, it's weird because that's a catch-22, because if you have CDs, then you're tempted to put labels on them, where you stick the sticker on the CD. The bad news about that is if it comes off in somebody's player, they're going to hate you forever. That's kind of one of the advantages. And you can look. There are, I have a Canon, I think it's an R260, and they make inkjet printable CDs, so you can actually print right on the CD now. But the easiest one, I think, that I am surprised that people miss is the email signature. And then, like I said, don't forget about press releases. That'll get you some good Google juice. And I am definitely wide open for any suggestions you have on how you promote your podcast. I think the key is, get business cards to your mom, your aunt, your family, your friends. Let them talk about it. That's your own built-in family network. There was a post at the Podcast Alley post about this where a guy had got his dentist into listening to his podcast because he just talked about it nonstop. So that's my thoughts on promoting your podcast, building audiences, things of that nature. Again, number one rule, content. Content with a capital C. Coming up on the show in future weeks, we will have the review of the DBX 286A. You're listening to it now. And what else we got? Last 5 and 5s coming up from PodCamp, Ohio. And again, your comments on how you promote your podcast. Anything that I didn't mention that maybe you go, oh, Dave missed this one. Feel free to share it with the audience. And I appreciate you tuning in. That's going to do it for this episode. Our website, again, is schoolofpodcasting.com. If you're looking to start your own podcast, School of Podcasting is the one-stop resource. We've got step-by-step tutorials. We've got resources. So if you're like, hey, where can I find pod-safe music? We've got 5-6 different locations. And, of course, we have our weekly roundtable. So if you get stuck along the way, you can chat with me live, and we'll get you going in the right direction. It's all over there at the schoolofpodcasting.com. Again, call in your comments, 888-563-3228, courtesy of podcastvoicemail.com. Or you can email me at schoolofpodcasting@gmail.com. Thank you very much for tuning in. And until we meet again, class dismissed.